Hello, friends, and welcome to Perfect Practice. Today, with me, I have somebody who has positively impacted my life in the short time that we've known each other. I have somebody who what I would call a dear friend, Scott Rago. Scott is joining me today, and he is going to be talking about, and we're actually going to be talking about how generational trauma impacts your personal and practice growth. This is something that shows up in so many ways that we may be unaware of. And in fact, Scott helped me with a shoulder issue that I was dealing with and helped me realize that there was some generational stuff that need to be cleared out. And he helped me clear that out. And I thought this would be very powerful for us to speak about with practitioners. So this is going to be a very new topic for us to discuss on this platform. However, I feel a very important topic because so many times in our business, we get caught up in our funnels, in our website, and in the technology, but it's really our inner psychology and how we show up in the world that makes the ultimate difference. And I know so many practitioners that I work with that have all the other stuff dialed in, but they just can't seem to get the breakthroughs that they need in their practice. And it turns out that the breakthrough that they really needed was with themselves. And so what's really fascinating about Scott's work is it spans all the way from water to now he works with, other practitioners and also his clients on helping them heal on so many different levels, but also through so many different generations. So we're going to dive a little bit deeper into that today. Scott, thanks for joining me. How are you today?
Thank you for having me. I'm honored to be here and look forward to serving the audience, which is our reason for being here.
Yeah. So I always like to share with people how we met. And we actually met through Mindshare. And
Correct.
we were part of a special interest group about longevity and wellness and biohacking. And there was, I don't know if you felt this way, but there was this instant connection that I kind of felt with you. And it was kind of unspoken. And then we started, exchanging messages, and we said, "Hey, let's connect." And it's kind of from there developed into, a budding friendship. And I want to thank you for, your energy, and I want to thank you for your generosity, and I want to thank you for the amazing conversation we had prior to this a few weeks ago, because it was really helpful in helping me understand how I can show up better for myself, better for my family, and also better for my practitioners that I coach and train. So appreciate you for that. And I want to start by inviting you to share where your journey starts. Where does if we were to go backwards and kind of reverse engineer where your interest in health and wellness and helping others starts, I'd love to explore that a little bit first.
Thank you. I'm so blessed for the acknowledgement and honoring our journey. And where my journey started really became with water. I was fascinated by water. I wanted to purify the water, thinking clean water, right? We're mostly water. And as I dove into this, I met a lady who asked me about living water. And that question has changed my life because I started pursuing, well, is water more than just a physical property? And so that rabbit hole led to me looking at water vibrationally, holding intent. So Masaru and what the bleep, and looking at water holding images or vibrations within it, right? So many religions around the world use water in prayer and ceremony. And so I started thinking, well, if water can hold all these wonderful things and like homeopathy, well, and that's just a dilute. What if purifying water created a dilute, but we haven't done anything with the vibrational information? The water's still resonating with the pollutant or the toxin. And I thought, whoa, how does this ripple through, right? Everything. So then years going on, I really looked at putting intent, gratitude. I even came up with a water prayer, and obviously water's in food. And so, having the intent or gratitude when you bring something into your body, how that, like you would say, your breath, how you're in the sympathetic or parasympathetic when you receive the water or the information. So that kind of just kept on rippling out. And my life traumas being adopted and other family pieces of trauma that I've experienced, my healing journey, I started realizing that there may be threads of trauma in my life. Like after a car accident, I realized how important forgiveness was to fully
Mm,
heal from that car accident. I held on to resentment from the gentleman who hit me because I couldn't play hockey, couldn't bend over, couldn't do, and I would have a lingering pain in my shoulder. And I thought, you know, the x-rays say I'm okay, but I've got a pain. Never thought that there was a correlation between my resentment and the pain. That forgiveness, letting him go, he wasn't intending to hit me, right? If he damaged somebody, that was his burden to carry. That's
mm,
his universe, not mine. I can forgive and let go. And then the pain went away. Some years later after that, I was playing hockey, tore my MCL, ACL, meniscus, and I chose to have a cadaver ACL put in. And one of the things I told the surgeon was I wanted to visualize the surgery. I wanted to see how it was going to go and visualize a perfectly working knee after, so that my recovery, my body knew exactly what to do. Well, the thing I missed was years later, I had realized that there may be information in that cadaver ACL, the trauma, a tragedy that I may have to clear,
mm.
and that both hemispheres of my brain would have to accept this new piece. So I started imploring applied kinesiology to test to see if the right hemisphere or the left hemisphere had fully anchored these new acceptance in, if it's fully strong. And so if that was the case, then there may be traumas beyond that. You know, if I could just take an ACL in to my body, what about my own beliefs or the genetics that currently we kind of think of as junk DNA? What lies in those areas? Can I dust that off? And I floated around a lot of different adoption healing groups because I had felt like there was a piece missing in my life. And I could not figure out, I knew that I was given up. And the lie that I had told myself so long was that my mom couldn't keep me. But the truth was that she didn't want me. And my truth there allowed me to let it go, to become whole, to go from insecure attachment to secure attachment, securing to myself, rippled through my life, really ripple through my family's life. And I started kind of muscle testing for all these, my worthiness that was tied to the adoption, being given up. And that's the piece I didn't understand, the financial piece in my practice, my worthiness. I had done so many things, but why wasn't I being fully realized or potential? And it was my worthiness, my insecure attachment, my neediness. The universe couldn't give me because I wasn't whole. I didn't have the vibration to attract it.
Yeah, this is something that it can be a hidden source of frustration because it can create energetic obstacles for people. So even though they feel like they're doing all the things right, learning from the best teachers in the world, taking all the right courses, even perhaps, ordering all the right testing and providing their clients with everything that they feel like they need, but there's
Right.
something that can be energetically blocked for the patient themselves, but also the practitioner as well. And this is like, this type of content can be difficult for people to grasp depending on where they are in their own kind of personal transformation and in their own journey. So how do you bring this up to a practitioner who is like very evidence-based, who is looking for, data, or is looking for proof, or is looking for some way to quantify what we're talking about today? Because I know that many practitioners who are listening, who are functional medicine practitioners, we can be very data oriented. And
Absolutely.
I'm going to invite everyone, to to kind of keep an open mind and keep an open heart so that you can absorb the conversation that we're having today, but know that there is data and there are findings to support what we're going to talk about today. So how do you open up that conversation with either a practitioner, and then let's talk about how practitioners can open up that conversation with their patients?
Sure. I think a little bit is like how I connected with you. There was an energy. I have been playing with subtle energies and my, attunement, picking up. There's a great video that there's a lady named Lauren Allred who she sings a song, Never Enough. And she was actually the singer, not Rebecca in the movie, but she was more comfortable singing behind the scenes. And she goes on, and British Has Talent. So Simon is there, and she has the courage. She steps up there, and you can hear her say, "It wasn't Rebecca, it was actually me." And in that moment, you hear a little stutter. It's very noticeable to me. But in that moment, I can hear the journey or the struggle that she has gone through, the worthiness that she was comfortable with, and now some type of healing, or that she has taken that next step. But there's still a physiological response that I'm hearing, seeing, identifying. So it's a trained eye, a trained ear, a trained, as like a Chinese practitioner who can sense the meridians, sense the heat or inflammation, right? We all have an attuned practice. What I like to open up the conversation is like heart. So there is no meter that says how much I love somebody, but we all have an experience of love. We can, it's not like we hold one kid and, oh, that's a 97, and the other kid comes over, oh, that's a 98. It's just love. And we don't currently have an instrumentation to measure love. We have different ways of receiving it and giving it, kinesthetic, auditory, visual, acts of service, right? But there's no scores or values on there. We just know it feels right, or we know it feels wrong. It's not. And I think that's where I often meet people who are evidence-based. My father is definitely evidence-based. And I've learned through him is, okay, so let's say that there are things that you don't quite understand, but you can still have an effect, even if you don't understand it. And I think it's when listening to a patient, it's often what they're not saying, or the space, the pauses in between the words, or where they get stuck, or something they repeat. There's often hidden clues in what they're saying. Often in a practitioner, it's their language, something they pause when they're saying, well, something like, oh, I'm really deserve, or I want to have a practice that does this and this, and you can hear the hesitancy, or you can muscle test it even to see if they really believe something. Have you ever done something where your name, I would say, my name is Scott, and then I would test strong, and I can then say, my name is Cindy, and you can push down on my hand. It's because I don't believe it, right?
Yep.
Well, we all have, you'll find out if your practice you don't believe what your practice is worth, it shows up in there. It absolutely does.
One of the conversations I just had recently with a group of practitioners is how when we are incongruent with what we charge, how that shows up in the conversation and how the subtle energy in the room completely changes. Now, that works both ways. It works if you charge too little, and it works if you charge too much. So, sometimes people will charge, let's say $500 for a service that they feel in their heart they know is worth thousands of dollars, or let's just say $1,000 for this example.
Right.
And when they present that price of $500, they go out of coherence. Energetically, they go out of coherence because
beautifully said.
What they feel and what they're sharing, expressing, are radically different from an energetic signature. And so they go back and they're kind of scratching their heads, wondering, why did the client say no? And what do? They lower their price even more, right? Because they think it's the price that's the problem. And the same thing happens if you charge too much, right? If you charge more than what you think you're worth, or more than what the service is worth, it's gonna energetically backfire. So it takes me back to one of the most powerful yet simple lessons I learned from one of my mentors, Joe Polish. And I don't know if he actually knew what he was saying from an energetic standpoint, but what he said is that the only person the price matters to is you. And so you've got to be able to look somebody dead in the eye. You've got to be able to look somebody right in from a heart-to-heart perspective and be able to, without stuttering, and stuttering is like, how we vocalize, but without stuttering in your heart field, be able to express what you're sharing. So that's one example how, sometimes when we're incongruent with what we feel and what we say, how it shows up in our business. What are some other examples as to where that incongruency can potentially show up from your experience?
Well, it's your field of energy. So if you're a practitioner and working on somebody, your belief in that you're connecting, you have to understand your field and be completely congruent with your field when you're working with somebody else. So understanding yourself and your vibration, and when you're facilitating for somebody else, that's different. To recognize what's yours and what's theirs, what's coming through you for somebody, and so stepping out of your ego and your energy and allowing the energy to work for them, because it's always ultimately about them, right? You're in place of service, so stepping your ego out. What other path that I employ there? It's such a rabbit hole question.
So, I like, maybe I can add to this. So I think a lot of times that, even when we're putting a plan together for our clients, an example would be, we go to a conference, we learn something new, right? And we have Monday morning syndrome, which is, I'm going to take everything I learned on the weekend and apply it to my patients. And we recommend it because we feel like, hey, this could probably help them. Right. But we have to have, that confidence and certainty, right? So confidence is being able to present what you're offering, but certainty is knowing that what you're going to be offering that person is going to be helpful to them. So, sometimes practitioners are constantly learning new things and they're constantly presenting new things, and they may have confidence, but what they lack is certainty. And that can affect compliance levels from our clients. So, that's one way that it might show up for some people is because we may lack certainty, they may lack certainty in what we're offering to them. And that can affect their compliance level and affect how they may show up from a, program delivery standpoint.
Perfect. Okay. So one of my mentors, Dave Asprey, conversations we've had, he has talked about where he has come from, where he had spreadsheets of supplements and he was just checking them all off. Data, like, okay, this one's good for me, this one's good for me. And I was asking him about, well, I muscle test my supplements. And I would go in and say, do I need this? Is this good? And then it evolved to where I could just think about the supplement and go forward or back, or muscle test myself. And then I could do it for somebody else, and it's evolved. And he was talking about how his I think it was his lamb would graze out in the field. It would sometimes go some thyme, and then it would eat some sage and some rosemary. And he laughed. He called it, self-basting. But what it really was is trusting the intuition, what they needed. If something was anti-parasitic, if it needed this nutrition, it knows intuitively. And so I think every practitioner, everybody out there has this intuitive intelligence. And so when you tap into it, when you know yourself, your heart, your mind, and your gut are aligned, to me, that's enlightenment, or you're aligned. And now you've opened your sensors to the field. You have all your learnings and teachings, that all your gifts that are coming to you. That is when you are at your most powerful. And so that is where your intuition and your certainty comes from, when you're in your alignment.
Love that. Let's talk about multi-generational trauma. So this is one that, can sneak up on people or take them by surprise, right? So I think it's pretty well accepted nowadays that our life experiences, especially early childhood traumas and experiences that we have, shape who we are as adults. It could shape our money mindset. It could shape our attitude towards, people who are different than us. It can shape our attitude towards our own self-worth. It can shape our attitude towards, being an entrepreneur, right? Depending on the environment that we grew up in, and even terminology like filthy rich, right, implies that everyone who's rich is also filthy at the same time. And we kind of say these things without realizing the important energetic signatures that we're putting out there into the world. So I think that's well accepted, right? Most of us can probably receive that and acknowledge that, yeah, that probably makes sense. However, multi-generational traumas, looking forwards and backwards, I think that's something that is a new concept for many practitioners. So I'd love your thoughts and perspective on that as well.
All right, let's dive into that. What led me down that field was looking at the vagus nerve and ventral and vagal dysfunction, being socially open, or dorsal function being shut down. And that there was a white paper that I read about, I think it was the BBC, that said, let me get this exact, as close as I can. It was about Civil War, and those who died in the Civil War, who survived, and the kinship. They were studying the kinship from those who died in the war versus those who lived on the male's gene. They were following through generation after generation and could see a shortened lifespan on the male side, generation after generation, from those who died in the war, from those who lived. And it said, and I thought, well, okay, I'm adopted. I don't know what I don't know. So that's when I really dove into genetics and thinking, okay, what is my ancestry? What is my heritage? Do I have something that I don't know? This is before I even recognized that, all right, I know my adoption, but what happened before that? I don't know my father. I don't know my mother. I've met some half sisters and half brother that's 80. 30 years my senior. Like, what's out there? And I was only getting partial stories. So I looked into my heritage. I'm Hungarian, just about 100%. And so I saw some Jewish descent, and I thought, well, Hungary, Holocaust. And I had this funny reaction my whole life to scent, carbon dioxide type. And so I started asking questions to myself, what is there, a trauma or trapped energy that is possibly here? And my body kept on saying yes. So I I remember trying to unfold this, like, what am I going to do? And so I did my practice of releasing that energy, that trapped. And what I do know today is that, I would have a very hard reaction to watching anything about the Holocaust. And somebody who has not gone down it, it's sad, but they wouldn't have the same reaction. And I thought, there's got to be something here. And so I started looking for other articles and more research around trauma being trapped, emotions being trapped. And what we do in life, and practitioners, and is we got to keep on moving. We just shove it down. I got to move forward. And we just stack it on top. And what I find is, it's opening an onion. You've got each layer. The body will let us know when something needs to come out. And there are things, anxieties, there are all types of things that are trapped that you're like, well, I've just always been anxious. Well, I don't know if you went through a potato famine or what in your life. What is your heritage? Everybody's story. And, we all have these skeletons in the closet. I just happen to be the skeleton in the closet for my family.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to unpack there for people.
Yeah.
And where do you even start? So how does one even evaluate or assess if this is the case?
Often I do a discovery and I start, for example, if I could talk about you, I even just watched a podcast where you mentioned your shoulder and I picked up that vibration on a video. It wasn't even directly with you. It was, so usually it's in discovery. I'm asking permission to, ask questions, follow my intuition with somebody. And I'm listening for language, how you say something, areas that maybe you're struggling in, relationships that keep on coming up. I'm looking at, the corners of your life. I'm dusting and I'm looking for things, typically in voice or if it's on Zoom, I can see facial tics. It's all types of meta programs that I'm picking up on that I've just trained over and over again to pick up. And so that's what I'm looking for.
What would be some of the signs for somebody who might be struggling with this?
I think a perfect example is that video that's floating around with Lauren Allred in the British Got Talent. The song is phenomenal. And you can hear in that is a stutter with her worth, her owning that song. The movie is her voice, but she let Rebecca be the face of that voice. And that's incongruence. And she's trying to step into that. So that's a perfect example that everybody can watch. And it happens very early in the video, just in her introduction. And that kind of gives me, that's kind of the same thing I saw with you, right? Those are the things, those are those little pieces of incongruence that are out there. You just have to be aware and open to them. Everybody's telling you, it's usually what's not being said, right? When somebody's lying to you, it's not what they're saying, it's what they're not saying to you often.
Okay. Is there a particular training that you took? Is this something that, was piqued your interest and you just kind of dive down the rabbit hole? How can, and the reason I ask that is how can practitioners kind of work towards implementing something like this in their practices?
So the basis of what I started with was the emotion code. So I kind of integrated muscle testing, the emotion code by Dr. Bradley Nelson. And when I started working with myself on this, as a rebel, I put my own spin on it and it unfolded for me. And then I started having this physical response when I was doing the clearings. And so I reached out to the coach that trained me in my life coaching process. She does a lot of emotional training. She's worked with Tony Robbins, and I asked her if she ever heard of this, and she's, yeah, you're having a physical response to the energy leaving you. And I thought, all right. So I cough and I hack as this energy comes out, and nobody taught me it. It just, my body has become a conduit for it, and I just let it. I try not to label it. The best thing I've ever called it was a Green Mile moment from the movie. But I try not to quantify it too much. I just allow it to happen. I think it stays more beautiful, more pure. It's nothing I possess. It just happens for me, through me, and for others that I'm facilitating this healing for.
Awesome. I think it does take a a much more holistic approach to get people well again, right? It's not just about nutrients, it's not just about food, it's not just about water. While those things are all important, it's also important for us to understand, subtle energies as you're describing. And oftentimes these are huge blind spots for people. So if somebody's interested in exploring this a little bit more, perhaps even getting on a call with you and learning more about if and how you can help them, what's the best way for them to reach out to you and connect with you?
Reach out. So it's scottrago.com, and send me an email, and we can set up a time at scott@scottrago.com. I'm still working through all of my social media. I don't have a lot out there. I think this is the most authentic and genuine way, because it's such a personal experience. I really want to help the people that are helping so many of us. The functional patient doctor partnership is such a beautiful model that I want to honor and help them create the ripple effect through their practice.
So, in terms of what they can expect, what's the best way somebody can prepare? And I'm sure when they start exchanging emails with you, you'll let them know. But what is the way that people can prepare, and what makes somebody who's listening to this an excellent candidate for setting up that time with you?
So what they can expect, we typically will start always off with a discovery call and a conversation. Obviously, the connection between myself and the practitioner has to be the trust and honoring their path and their journey. It's not about me, it's about them. And if they're having incongruence in where all this skill and energy they're putting into their practice, and they're not getting the matching universal response, there may be some hidden trapped energies, traumas that are floating around in their lineage themselves. Often it's both. And that, so I'll start asking some questions about, the past or some moment, similar to what we did. I'm not even sure how we ended up with On Your Father, but serendipitously, it just ended up there.
Mm-hmm.
And that is trusting the energy and trusting the moment. Being present with you allows me to be guided. That's so every journey is different, but exciting.
Yeah. So to me, it feels like you help people kind of get spiritually unstuck
Yes,
and, kind of address some of the invisible forces that may be preventing them from best expressing their gifts and therefore best expressing their service to humanity through their business. Does that sum it up accurately?
absolutely, because everything is tied together, right? You can have everything aligned, but if you're only looking at a linear world, there is a quantum world out there, and they're one and the same.
Mm. You mentioned earlier your water prayer. And so I'd love to leave people with that if you'd be so kind to share it, because I thought it was quite powerful, and I'd love for people to be able to implement something like this practical into their life immediately.
Absolutely. So I'm just going to say it from memory because it just happens. So I put my hands around the water bottle or glass in this case, and I'll say, with this water, I co-create my world. I bring oceans and oceans of abundance in the form of health, wealth, love, happiness, wisdom, peace, and joy. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And then you take a sip.
All right. I love it. So much to be grateful for. I'm grateful for our time today and the abundance of value that you have to offer to the world. Thank you for expressing your gift and sharing it with us. And I'm going to encourage all of you to, if you feel called to, set up a time to speak with Scott, and he'll be happy to help you and serve you just like he did me. It was wonderful to take a peek into, a different aspect of my own personal journey and healing. And it was a very unique and cool experience. And it was great to be able to, tap into healing through my father. That was a really, without getting into the details, that was a part of my journey, is by healing myself and healing my father, that really healed our energy and bond. And for me, it was showing up as some shoulder pain. So you just never know how it shows up in your life. For some of you, it might be something more material. For others, it might be pain or discomfort in your body. For some of you, it might be a relationship that just isn't going the way you would like it to go. And healing that could be a very, very powerful tool for you to be able to get your message out to more people. But heal yourself. I mean, at the end of the day, us healers need some healing, and Scott's here to help us. Thank you, Scott. Appreciate you. Any final words you want to share with our listeners?
I would say the light in me sees the light in you. I honor this moment and this time, and just simply gratitude for this space to share my story.
Thank you, my friend. Keep spreading the love, keep spreading the light, and we will do the same. Much gratitude, much love, and thank you for sharing.